Welcome to LUTV News InFocus, where we feature interesting topics on campus, in the community, and in the world of culture. I am Tommy Byers. Lamar University Assistant Professor and Special Collections Librarian Penny Clark recently wrote a book titled Beaumont Civil Air Patrol in World War II. In the early 1940s, Beaumont and Port Arthur were leaders in the oil refining, which kept the Allied wheels moving towards victory. Penny joins us to talk about the origin of her book, the research process, and the impact Beaumont and Port Arthur played during World War II. Welcome, Penny. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. So, what was the writing process that really went into writing your new book?
Well, it was something I had been interested in for many years. I used to, previous to my work at Lamar, I worked at the Terrell Library in downtown Beaumont, where one of their many great collections is the Johnny Walker collection. And Johnny Walker was one of the men who served at the Civil Air Patrol, and he had a number of photographs and some oral histories and some other information. So I was interested in it.
Okay.
But then when I came to the Terrell, I started looking at the Larry Fisher collection, and Larry Fisher's collection has over 8,000 images, a lot of really great Texas images of oil fields and churches and cattle roundups and big thicket, so many different topics. And one of the topics was Larry Fisher, was the archivist and historian for the Civil Air Patrol Base 10, based here in Beaumont. And we found that we had a gentleman came from the Texas Historical Commission, and he said, "You have got the best collection in Texas." And so people ask me today, I got fielded a question. So we do have a very great collection. Certainly the COVID, it was something I had started on, but during COVID we didn't have as many research requests, and so this gave me an opportunity to put a little bit of time into it. Certainly a very interesting, one of the problems I did have was that Fisher's collection is basically photographs. There are some scrapbooks and other material, but I didn't have a lot of the paper documents. There were some at the Terrell. Initially, it was closed. And so the John Walker collection gave me kind of an insight. It identified some of the people in our photographs, so that was helpful. There's a great collection that I would love to visit someday at the University of Texas, Dallas. It's an aviation history archives. And I had contacted them, didn't communicate effectively, and then I heard later on they have 130 boxes from two men that were very influential in the Civil Air Patrol. They're not processed.
Okay.
So 130 boxes. The university's talked about granting me a week to do that. I'd really have to drink a lot of coffee before I came in to tackle that. But it's something, and then unfortunately they were closed when I was writing the book. And I hope at some time in the future I can go. I've thought about doing a different book talking about the Civil Air Patrol in Texas during World War II, okay, expanding my focus a little bit.
So where does your the origin of the book pick up?
Well, one of the things that you have to discuss in Beaumont, it always comes back to oil. That Spindletop is such a cataclysmic event, not only, of course, in Beaumont history, but in world history. And during World War II, as Joseph Stalin said, this is a war of engines and octanes, that everything took petroleum. All of the planes took oil. All of the tanks took oil. I remember one of the stories when I was doing researching another topic, and a German was in North Africa. He was in the tank unit, and he ran out of oil, he ran out of bullets, and he waved his shirt in surrender, and he said, "Hitler kaputt." And what he meant was, you can't fight this type of war without oil. That they would burn up, the Air Force would burn up more oil in a day during World War II than they had the whole rest of World War I. So oil is just crucial. One of the books that you might take a look at, if you haven't already, is The Prize. And it talks about how Texas, being the refining center it was so crucial to American victory, that it's really important to get the oil out. So whenever you do a book set in Beaumont, oil always comes out. Oil is always so important. And of course, after Spindletop, this was, as they said, this is where oil became an industry. They didn't know how to do it. It was experimentation. And after a couple years, they had basically believed they had depleted the oil at Spindletop.
And so how does the oil really impact the flow of the war, especially because eventually once the Germans found out that, hey, all of the oil supply is coming from Beaumont, how did that really trigger a turning point?
Well, it was a terrifying time for people. One of the things that if you look at the newspaper from 1942, Beaumonters expected to be attacked every day. That if you look at the newspapers, people realized this would have been a very attractive place to attack. Not only was it an oil refining center, which is enough right there, but it's also a place that it was a shipbuilding center. World War II really started earlier here, and they later on produced 109 ships.
Oh, wow.
So this was really a World War II place. The Germans were they were smart people. They realized that this is really important, and so they would send submarines out to blow up ships that carried oil or any other supplies. And so about 150 men from this area that were on, not military ships, just cargo ships, lost their lives because they'd be on ships that were blown up. And so it was really, must have been a terrifying time. There was actually a group, the American Women's Voluntary Service. I'll tell them a little bit more about that. That's really an important group. They would take the men out to the base 10 was located out at what was then Amelia, and 10 miles from downtown. And the women, one of the things that they were doing was they were practicing night driving. You know, you had to have blackouts during that era so that the German subs couldn't tell where these attractive targets were, and so they would anyway practice night driving. I can't imagine driving in the dark without, you know, turning on my lights. That must have been so terrifying. But they were really, I think, learning. They expected the Germans to attack Texas as they had Great Britain. And so they were looking or anticipating this, saying this is going to happen. We're preparing to drive ambulances in the dark and to save as many human lives as we can.
And you've mentioned Base 10. So can you tell us a little bit about the impact that Base 10 had here on the community of Beaumont?
Well, at that time, people were very patriotic. They realized it was absolutely essential for the United States to win the war. Certainly we had a whole different outlook than the Nazis, that it was really absolutely essential to win. There was a huge support. It was a two-way street that Base 10 would do anything they could to help the community, and the community came out, provided them transportation, provided them like a new rec center, you know, a place where they could listen to the radio and listen to records. And so it was a two-way street. They got along very well, had a lot of fundraising events together.
And so before we go, where are some locations that individuals can find out more information on the Civil Air Patrol in Beaumont?
Well, of course, you can read my book that's just recently come out. We have some of the images. There was a gentleman named Frank Balzic, a good friend of mine. He works for the Smithsonian. He's written a marvelous book on the Civil Air Patrol in World War II. I can't recollect the name of it, but he's a person I have a lot of admiration, a lot of respect for. He's written a book. We have some of our images on our website. And you can go down and take a look at John H. Walker collection at the Tyrrell Library. So that's a few places to start.
Yes, so, well, thank you, Ms. Penny, for joining us today, and thank you for watching. And you can find the Beaumont Civil Air Patrol in World War II anywhere books are sold. Thank you for watching LUTV News in Focus. To see more content from LUTV News, follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook.